This morning, press conference with Democratic leadership announcing the charges against Donald Trump. We're gonna have Nadler talking about each of those, but first, the announcement of sort of why they are going forward with the process, how important it is that they do so.
Over the last several months, the investigative committees of the House have been engaged in an impeachment inquiry into President Donald Trump's efforts to solicit foreign interference in the 2020 elections. Efforts that compromised our national security and threatened the integrity of our elections. Throughout this inquiry, he has attempted to conceal the evidence from Congress and from the American people. Our president holds the ultimate public trust. When he betrays that trust and puts himself before a country, he endangers the Constitution, he endangers our democracy, and he endangers our national security.
You know, I don't always agree with Nadler, but I like there that he sums up sort of why this matters. What are the stakes in this entire thing? And it's important that he does that because I feel like it should be obvious, but so few of the people discussing this over the past few months, so little of the conversation has actually been about that. I've been bothered by this the entire time, talked about it quite often, but the willingness with which much of the political media has focused almost exclusively on optics and electoral consequences and how this might or might not affect voters in one particular battleground state in a year, that's been really depressing, and it hasn't gone away. I didn't end up doing a segment on this, but over the weekend, S.E. Cupp had a long segment where she was opining about the impeachment effort, and all of it was about, are the Democrats really doing the best thing for Democratic chances in 2020? How might this affect some of their down ballot races? And is this really the right thing for their image? All of that, the sort of conversation that if you found out that Democratic leaders were doing it behind the scenes, you might rightfully think, well, that seems kind of corrupt and self-serving. Is that really what they should be focusing on when this matter is so important? But it's not behind closed doors, those people thinking about their own career. It is someone with an incredibly powerful, long-reaching media platform entirely focused on the future career prospects of a few Democratic politicians, not on the long-term damage that could be done to our democracy if politicians are told that they can invite foreign meddling into our elections, you can cover it up, and there will be no consequences. So right on Nadler for focusing on that. Now we move forward to the actual charges. There are apparently going to be two. Here Nadler explains the first.
Today, in service to our duty to the Constitution and to our country, the House Committee on the Judiciary is introducing two articles of impeachment charging the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, with committing high crimes and misdemeanors. The first article is for abuse of power. It is an impeachable offense for the President to exercise the powers of his public office to obtain an improper personal benefit while ignoring or injuring the national interest. That is exactly what President Trump did when he solicited and pressured Ukraine to interfere in our 2020 presidential election.
100% agree, very important. I don't know if it's necessarily one of the worst things that Donald Trump has done as president, but obviously, clearly, and easily, understandably, an impeachable offense that he has committed there. At least in terms of it being revealed, seems unprecedented, although not unexpected, because as we've talked about many times, Donald Trump has been telling us over and over again that this is exactly the sort of thing that he would do. He does not believe that it's wrong to try to get foreign leaders and foreign governments to meddle in our elections for the personal electoral benefits of one politician, as long as it's him. He doesn't think that that's wrong. And we need to make clear as a country, do we think that it's wrong? Or do we think that 2 elections from now, it should come down to, did the Democrats get enough help from Morocco, or was it outweighed by the help that Azerbaijan gave to the Republican nominee? Like, is that what we want? Obviously not. And I think we all know that what he did is wrong. Some of us, 30% of the country, can't admit it because we adore Donald Trump more than the very concept of democracy. But everybody fundamentally understands that what was done was wrong. It can't be accepted. And it's sort of, it doesn't matter in terms of his impeachment, but it's even more offensive that that he thinks he can get away with this abuse of power, of using the power and prestige of his office to benefit himself personally, when we gave him 100, 200 of those free. How many times has he benefited himself financially using the power of his office? He's still doing it. Republicans are constantly holding meetings and events at his offices right now. Foreign leaders are doing the same. He has benefited himself so much, and that has been totally allowed. Almost nobody even talks about emoluments. But the line has to be drawn somewhere. The Democrats wanted to draw it at not trying to sway an election with foreign interference, and he finds that to be unacceptable. But that is not the only charge. We also have obstruction of Congress, as Nadler will explain here.
These actions, moreover, are consistent with President Trump's previous invitations of foreign interference in our 2016 presidential election. And when he was caught, when the House investigated and opened an impeachment inquiry, President Trump engaged in unprecedented, categorical, and indiscriminate defiance of the impeachment inquiry. This gives rise to the second article of impeachment for obstruction of Congress. Here, too, we see a familiar pattern in President Trump's misconduct. A president who declares himself above accountability, above the American people, and above Congress's power of impeachment, which is meant to protect against threats to our democratic institutions, is a president who sees himself as above the law.
So that is, of course, accurate, and it's never been as accurate as it is about Donald Trump, because not even related to the impeachment inquiry, but if you've been watching his legal struggles both in DC and in New York, his lawyers have gone, this is on financial matters, but they have gone with the legal argument, the attempted legal argument that has been shot down, thankfully, that because he is president, he cannot be charged with literally anything. That is going way beyond using the OLC notes from the 70s when it comes to whether or not he can actually be indicted. They believe that he is literally above the law, and they have attempted to use that as their legal defense in all matters, from actual potentially impeachable consequences involving Ukraine, all the way down to trying to protect his tax documents from being given to Democratic leadership in Congress. And so that's 100% true. Now, where Nadler, I guess, sort of loses me or doesn't go far enough is those two charges make all the sense in the world. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how many you have in a legal sense. Any one being passed means that the president is impeached, and then it goes to the Senate for the next step, obviously. But I mean, he alluded to there the massive obstruction of justice that was unveiled in the Mueller report. He alluded to it, but it's not in the charges. It was going to be initially. That was what we heard. That was the leak, was that those obstructions of justice would be summed up in 1, 2, but they're not, which means that since we're unlikely to have a second push for impeachment later on in Donald Trump's term, that obstruction of justice will never have any consequences for Donald Trump. It was revealed plain as day for all to see, but in terms of legal consequences, there will be nothing. So they've got him on abuse of power, obstruction of Congress, obstruction of justice. Totally fine, no consequences. And look, we can have a long conversation about strategically or whatever. Was it wiser to focus this on one thing versus tying in all of the other horrible things that he's done as president? We've been having that conversation for literally months now, and I don't know. But I feel like this is the time when it should have been a bigger part of the conversation, not just having that done behind closed doors in committee rooms for a couple of weeks. Because those things are now effectively off limits. It wouldn't make sense for them to try to pursue them later on when this was their big opportunity. And if they want to sway as many people, bring over as many people as possible into sort of understanding and believing that this is an actionable set of charges against Donald Trump, it is pretty limited. It's clear to me, but still it might be able to be pitched as limited to a regular person. We'll have to see. For more political news, breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.